Welcome to the Get Good at Presenting podcast with Lee Jackson.
Hi, and welcome back to Get Good at Presenting. I've got a special guest today who is Alan Stevens. Hello, Alan.
Hello, Lee.
Pleasure to chat to you. You've actually been on the podcast before.
I have, yes.
Talking about storytelling, which is a great thing. So we had some fun on that one, didn't we?
We did. We certainly did.
But times are a little different now. This is my first post-coronavirus podcast.
Yeah.
And overnight, the speaking and training industry, the events industry, in effect, has kind of ground to a halt. How's it been for the last few days for you, Alan?
Well, no, it's been very interesting. In fact, it's strange. I've had my busiest time ever, with lots of online meetings and online events, and a lot of offering help and support, which is what the community does, and that's what we're always very, very good at. And what I'm seeing at the moment is the industry is in trouble, yes, because lots of people are having events cancelled. But on the other hand, there are lots of things that people are doing that are quite innovative, and I think this virus has brought the future forward. I think has accelerated us into a place where we would have been in 4 or 5 years anyway. So I think for that, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's a little bit like the kind of grieving process thing, isn't it? That I think we were all shocked for a couple of days and didn't quite know, because obviously most of what I do is in front of an audience, and all of a sudden the only audience I have is my 2 cats and and one of my daughters and my wife. So they've heard all my jokes, Alan. So this is not
a shame.
so I think there was certainly a shock, I think, but then I'm amazed that people have actually thought this is where we need to go. This is what we need to do. So I thought it'd be really good for you to maybe just give us a little bit of expertise, some technical stuff, and then some tips on actually, if you are a speaker and you're used to being either with 12 people in a training room doing a masterclass type thing, or whether you're with up to 2,000 like we've all spoken in front of. All of a sudden, we're using Zoom or other technology. So what changes in not the technical stuff, but what changes sort of in our delivery style, would you say, Alan?
Well, I'd say there are several things that you need to think about. The first thing to say is that I think you need to stick to what you're good at. You know, make sure that whatever you're doing online with a remote audience or a virtual audience is pretty much the same thing you've always done. So in your case, you talk about presenting absolutely brilliantly. So all the stuff that we talk about, we should carry on talking about. Still a demand for it. In terms of presentation style, people love a human connection, whether it's done digitally or whether it's done in person. So I think a lot of the style that you use is using people's names, find out who's on the call. If it's a small number of people, use their names quite often, ask them questions, get them involved. If you can see their images, that's even better, because quite often in a Zoom call or a GoToWebinar, you can see a lot of the people's faces. And don't try and talk for too long without having some connection, a poll, a question, a response to something. So what my take on it is that you can't do more than about 90 minutes at a time if you're presenting a training session, for example, with a break in the middle, maybe 15 minutes. Yeah. But every 20 minutes or so, every 15 or 20 minutes, break it up with something. Funnily enough, it's the sort of thing we do anyway, isn't it?
Exactly. I think
it's like real life.
Yeah, exactly. Because I always said, even if you're the best speaker in the world, if you're super famous, after 10 or 15 minutes, people are usually going, can we just have a change of pace here? Yeah. And it's funny, I think some of our professional colleagues in the industry, there's been a mixture of some kind of just, going for it, and some are always been online. I've presented a bit online, not an enormous amount, but little bits here and there. But then there's also even really professional and experienced speakers who have just freaked out a little bit, Alan, I think.
They have. You're absolutely right. And I think it's partly because it's a different way of dealing with people. And you love to see the whites of people's eyes, don't you, and all that sort of thing. But it's not very different to being on television. And I liken what we're doing now to a TV show. And, of course, I've got a bit of a background in TV, as you know. If you see what you're doing now as more of a TV show than an on-stage presentation, I think it's much easier to cope with. I mean, it's great being on TV. We can have our own TV channels and our own TV shows and our own guests and all that sort of thing. And it shouldn't be scary. But the thing is, people haven't made that mindset shift yet. They're still thinking, I can only work on a stage in front of a big audience. I don't know what I'm doing when I'm sitting at a desk in front of a computer. But you do need to change your mindset, and you need to think about it like I'm presenting on TV, not I'm standing on a stage.
Is it a kind of, I suppose some people have feared all of a sudden, I haven't got my slides as a crutch. Mm-hmm. They might be thinking, I haven't got my prop. All of a sudden, I think maybe it's a fear of technology as well. Do you think, Alan?
Yeah. I think you're right, Lee. And what I would suggest to people is they do take a little bit of time to learn the technology. Whether they're using Zoom, GoToWebinar, Adobe Connect, BeLive, Jet Webinar. There are all Microsoft Teams. There are loads of systems out there at the moment, and it needs an hour or two of familiarity so that you know what you're doing. There's nothing worse than somebody sort of coming online to present a webinar and saying, I'm not sure how to share my screen. Which I saw somebody doing the other night. I thought, for goodness sake,
wow.
Learn. It's like doing anything. Learn the basics. Find out how these things work. Practice with a few friends or practice on your own. And once you've learned the basics, then by all means go for it. But please don't go online and ask people in your webinar or your seminar, how do I do that?
Yeah, I understand. And I think, I hosted a Zoom meeting the other day with 17 people on it. And one of the reasons I did it was I wanted to do it as a host. I wanted to get used to the muting and the unmuting and the put your hands up. And actually trying to do that was actually pretty stressful, I must admit.
Yeah. And you've got the chat window as well to look at. And if you've got a back channel, if somebody's talking to you on WhatsApp on the side or something like that, that's why it's always useful to have a co-host if you possibly can. So if you're presenting to a significant number of people, having a co-host who can monitor the chat, who can offer advice, maybe turn people's muting on and off, that's extremely helpful. We can't always do it, I know. But if you can, it's very helpful.
Yes, I think this idea of the interaction is quite nice because I guess on a TV program, a traditional older TV program, they use the phrase broadcasting, don't they?
Yes.
So you broadcast and people listen.
Yes.
But actually what we're doing is we're broadcasting and then stopping for interaction, broadcasting, asking questions, broadcasting, saying, can you just chip in on that, John or Harriet or whoever? So, is it broadcasting and then pausing? Would that be a good way of looking at it?
It depends how you're working. I mean, for example, if you're presenting to an event somewhere else, I mean, we will one day get back to real audiences in rooms.
Yeah.
And I anticipate that we're going to be working at what I call blended events, where you could be coming in remotely, you could be there live, the audience could be there, and the audience could be remote. And I think all those things together form a blended event. And I think, coming back to my co-hosting point there, you need to have somebody on the ground. So if you're presenting remotely to any audience anywhere, you need a person to help you, a person who can feel the temperature and give you feedback. And that's why I'm always very, very keen to have a back channel. And it's like, again, television, very similar. You've got an earpiece, you can hear what the director's saying, you can hear the gallery, and you need to be able to have that feedback coming back to you so that if you're presenting remotely and you can't see or sense the audience, you've got somebody there who can give you that feedback. It's this whole thing would have happened anyway, as I was saying earlier on. We're going to have to get used to this anyway. We might as well get used to it now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people, just in both work and in my personal life, people have stepped up.
Yeah.
There is schools obviously using it now, and they've never done that. Schools have been very traditional in their approach in lots of ways.
Yes.
Teacher at the front of the class, chalk and talk, PowerPoint. And churches have gone online, Alan.
That's right. I've been talking to people about that. I mean, as you know, I'm a governor of a couple of schools here in London. You visited one of them yourself very successfully, and thanks for that. And they use things like Show My Homework, which is an online system that a lot of schools use, and so they're used to it.
Yeah.
So they've already got into that, and then they can just extend the use of that for people who are stuck at home.
Yeah, it's a kind of a pressure. So let's just quickly talk about technology then. We're currently on Zoom. I'm finding Zoom the most reliable. Do you have any? What are your comments around the technology, Alan?
Zoom is. I've heard some comments about glitches on Zoom. I think that's probably more to do with broadband than the Zoom technology itself.
Yeah.
So the Zoom is the medium of choice for a lot of people, although corporately Microsoft Teams is quite popular, and also Adobe Connect.
Yeah.
So depending on the audience you're working with, you might be forced to use different technology if your client insists upon it. But yeah, Zoom is good. Zoom, I think, when you're using Zoom, normal rules apply. Close down all other programs. If you're having difficulty with the connection, then turn the video off and just go to audio only. Use things like, if you're using a Mac, you can use things like Clean My Mac to get the memory clear and so on. Make sure nobody else is using broadband if you're working from home. I even had some government advice to turn the microwave off, but I'm not quite sure why. So maybe that's just
how long would a microwave be on for?
I really don't know. But whatever you do, get some clear space. Make sure you're the only person using broadband, because if you're hosting it, then you've got to be fully present.
And there's kind of a nice little tip as well, I think, which is that if you're in the UK and you record a Zoom in the morning, there's less of the world online at that point.
True. Absolutely
true. Which I think has definitely worked. America and, other people are not online yet. So, yeah, we're recording this at 9:30 in the morning, and it's audio only. Our video works fine, but actually, just in case, I've switched to audio only, just so we don't get those, little breakups and stuff. Yeah. But I think I've probably used them all. I've used GoToWebinar and all those other ones. But Zoom for me has just been the easiest, and I think and you can use it for free.
You can. It's worth getting the paid version. It's only about £12-14 a month. I think it's well worth investing in that.
Yeah, and they add all sorts of extras. But actually, unless you're doing really complex webinars, I think is it £12 plus VAT or something? That's all it is. Yeah,
something like that. But bear in mind, there's a 40-minute restriction on the free version. So if you're working for an hour and it suddenly falls over 40 minutes, that's a bit embarrassing.
Well, I was reading something the other day that they've removed that, and then
I didn't realise that.
Or they've removed it in certain countries, and it's really complicated. So
just pay for it.
So basically, you can pay 14 quid, get it, and you can unsubscribe. So it's not a lot of money, is it? So
no, it's not to keep our businesses going. Absolutely.
No, absolutely not. Yes, I'm sure, like me and you, I've gone through and looked at all my little subscriptions in the light of new. And just thought, what can I get rid of? And actually, the only thing I've added is Zoom, for sure. I've
added a few music subscriptions because I know a lot of musicians, and I know that they need support as well at this tough time because they can't perform. I've subscribed to a couple of music services, only for about £10 a month. And also, there's a comedy service, trying to keep the Comedy Store going as well. So they do a $9.99 a month service for sort of unlimited comedy. And I think, my goodness, we need a bit of that. So I'm quite happy to pay for that.
Oh, that's great. I've never heard. I didn't realise they did that one. That's good. Yeah, they're very. Yeah, I think we need to support all those kind of artists and ourselves doing that. So, so I don't want to go on for too long because you're a busy man. You're probably doing thousands of these today. So, tell me, Alan, have you got like a top 3 tips people are just presenting online for the first time? Yeah. What are your top tips there? You've mentioned
top tips. Learn the technology. Spend an hour or so learning the basic skills of anything. And there are all sorts of tutorials around for using Zoom. You can go to the Zoom website. Everyone in the world is doing a how to use Zoom course, so for free. So that's not a problem finding that sort of thing out. Make sure that you've got somewhere comfortable and quiet to present, so that you're not going to be interrupted. Turn off all your phones. Turn off anything that might make a noise. Advise your family. Nail the pets down so they can't come in, whatever it is. Make sure that you're not going to be disturbed, and have a practice run through first. On Zoom, you can. It sounds a bit sad. You can have a meeting with yourself and just record that, see how it looks. And the last one, and this is a bugbear for a lot of us: look in the camera. The camera is easy to find. It's usually at the top of the screen in the middle, and if you look, what happened? The temptation, of course, is to look at the people on the screen. And if you do that, your eye line isn't into the camera. It can make quite a big difference. Just moving your eyes a few inches towards the camera rather than looking at the screen. It's really hard to do because you want to look at people when you're talking to them. But if you can, it makes a big difference to how they perceive you.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I've never even, because mine's quite high up, my camera, I guess, because it's on an external monitor, But of course, the other thing I'd like to add to that is, please never, ever have the camera underneath you.
I've seen your posts about that.
Please, Alan. Right. I'm on a mission. I do not want to see nasal hair in this process.
No nasal hair.
Because as we're on lockdown for another couple of weeks at least, at time of recording, the haircuts are going to get worse.
Yeah.
The nasal hair could get worse. You know,
we're going back to the 70s, frankly.
Yes. There's going to be a lot of hair around. We need to make sure. But I'm amazed at how many people, their nose is on the camera. It's quite staggering, really.
Well, people are just not thinking. What you need to do is just record yourself for a couple of minutes and then play the video back. Get someone else to look at it. Don't review it yourself. Get someone else, hopefully in your household, have a look and say, how do I look? Yeah. And they'll say, I can see right up your nose. So in that case,
fantastic.
What a good idea. Can I just mention, Lee, would you mind if I just mention the Remote Speaking Facebook group?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. So you go ahead and do a plug for that, Alan.
Yeah, okay. Well, about 3 weeks ago, it occurred to me that there are going to be people who are going to, I didn't realize the extent how it was going to go. None of us did, I don't think. But I thought it would be helpful for people to get together in a Facebook group and share their advice, just like we're doing now, about speaking online, remote speaking. So I set up a Facebook group. I just called it Remote Speaking. The thing that surprised me most of all, I went online and I thought, I wonder who owns the domain remotespeaking.com. I'll invite them along. And nobody owned it, so I bought it. So I now own remotespeaking.com.
Wow.
And virtualspeaking.net. But the group itself has now got over 900 people in it, event planners, speakers, organisers, and we're all exchanging opinion. I've got an absolute rule, no commerciality. Nobody can sell anybody anything in the group. But they can demonstrate things. So I've got people coming in to demonstrate software, for example, that people might be interested in. People are giving tips and advice, asking questions. It's a really lively community. So it's just, if you go on Facebook and look up Remote Speaking, you'll find it.
That's great. Yeah, I'm certainly a member, and a lot of people are chipping in there, and it certainly has got a lively group for sure. So thanks for doing that, Alan.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll come back, in a couple of weeks and talk about the big issues. Yeah. But today I just wanted to get a quick, how do we get online? How do we do remote speaking? There's a massive resource there, and the Facebook group is completely free, of course, isn't it? So
yes, of course. Yeah.
Tons of resources there. So thank you so much, Alan. I appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure to talk to you, Lee.
Thank you. All the best.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Get Good at Presenting podcast with your host, Lee Jackson. If you'd like to know more about Lee's work as a motivational keynote speaker and presentation coach, visit his website at leejackson.biz. That's leejackson.biz.